When we meet the prophet Jeremiah in this week's Haftarah, he is in prison. He has been put there for prophesizing that the city of Jerusalem would be sieged, conquered, and an exile would begin. The powers to whom he spoke truth did not care for Jeremiah's message. And as some people do when they hear things they don't wish to hear, they try to silence the speaker. Jeremiah speaks to us from his prison cell, and it will not be the first time that Jeremiah is placed in jail. He was guilty of speaking his truth more times, and he suffered for it with the example of his incarceration. He is put back into prison at least one more time, and in his prophetic book in chapter 38, we find him there again because, as the soldiers and high-ranking officials say, he's bringing us down. He's affecting morale. The soldiers can't keep up their spirits. They would rather hear the prophets that say, everything's going to be just fine. And there are times when we need those voices, but as the city during Jeremiah's lived experience was falling apart, what he was saying was merely reflecting the reality of his day. But the top-ranking politicians would have none of it, though King Zedekiah at times seems a little inclined to listen to Jeremiah. He nonetheless puts Jeremiah back in prison, allots him 1 loaf of bread per day. Important note, in the book of Jeremiah, it says, while there was still bread in the city, because they were rapidly descending into the scourge of famine. And Jeremiah is lowered into a pit where his students reported, when they wrote his book down, there was no water. In such a way, he is, of course, linked to Joseph, also lowered into a pit by his brothers, not the first time he would be in prison, and where the Torah famously tells us there was no water. Jeremiah is ultimately lifted up out of the mud, but he continues to prophesy, continues to get in trouble, and goes weeping with the people into exile. He is, of course, the traditional, considered author of the Book of Lamentations. The man knew whereof he spoke. But his position in prison for telling the truth, very similar to Joseph actually, makes him one of a number of great prophetic voices that have spoken to us from prison. And indeed, God is mysterious, because on Thursday afternoon, with a real need to participate in something important and positive, I was able for the first time in a while to attend the monthly meeting. It's been nearly impossible since the in-person meetings began again. I was able to go all through COVID, but we only have 24 hours in the day. But I made a point this month. I wanted to go to the monthly meeting of the San Francisco Black Jewish Unity Coalition. It was an honor to see Patty there. And it really meant a lot to me to go. I needed it. I needed to be lifted up, and I needed to be reminded of such important work going on in the world. And the Black Jewish Unity Coalition does a lot of that work. And as fortune would have it, the speakers were 2 inspiring women named Celia and Jody, who have founded a group, an organization called Hope Beyond. And on their webpage, these ladies I was introduced to less than 48 hours ago, They have a quote from Isaiah, chapter 61, verse 1. The Spirit of God is upon me, because God has anointed me, to preach good tidings to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and the opening of the prison to those who are bound, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord and the day of vengeance of God, to comfort all who mourn, to console those who mourn in Zion. Hope Beyond is a ministry. It is a Christian ministry. And I was moved by their generosity, their erudition, their passion. They both work other jobs. This is their side gig, but my goodness, could you tell that this means so much to them? And if you were listening carefully just now, you may have heard in Isaiah's chapter 61, verse 1, a direct reference to this week's Parsha. Did you happen to notice it? To proclaim liberty to the captives. A slight rephrasing, but Isaiah is quoting directly from Leviticus, celebrating the announcement of proclaiming release throughout the land for all of the inhabitants in the Jubilee year. I've decided there are few coincidences in this world. And I was so struck by the love and the commitment of these two women to work at the moment with women who are imprisoned. They hope to expand their ministry to include men. And primarily what they ask is for people to be a friend to someone in jail. And to try with all of our spiritual strength to not judge those who are incarcerated. One of the two founders was imprisoned for 17 years. And her primary goal in life is to take the love and the friendship that she found with her pen pal, Jody, and pay it forward. From the Kishka's plea is to remember the fact, and it is a fact, that for the most part, people who end up in prison started behind the 8 ball in life, didn't ask for the circumstances into which they were born, and just were plain unlucky with the hand of cards that God dealt them. It's so easy to judge people that are behind bars, and it's so easy also to do something small, to say to Jody and Celia and the Hope Beyond ministry, yes, I'll be a pen pal. I'll write to someone in prison who needs to know that there's a human being on the outside that sees through the bars of their incarceration, through the hard shells that so many of these women, particularly, and men, of course, too, develop in prison, and say, I still see you. There is hope. If you'd like to know more about Hope Beyond Incorporated, this beautiful ministry, where their vision is to see incarcerated individuals become truly free, healed, full of hope, and empowered to succeed, whether they are released or not. We hope to see them discover their true identity through love, acceptance, and the holy message. I'll quote them directly. They say through the gospel message. We aim to develop awareness for and bring help to the needs of those lost, forgotten, broken people, and to prove that prisoners are equally deserving and have unlimited potential if offered proper rehabilitation, opportunity, and grace. They don't ask much. You can write in the form of a text, an email, or an old-fashioned letter. A small thing that can change a person's life. Because ultimately what Jeremiah sends to us from his prison cell is a message of hope. Part of this parsha focuses on the redemption of land, the helping out of neighbors, the not wronging of your kinsmen. And that's something that Jeremiah does while he's in prison. He helps redeem his kinsman's land. And he, because he's a human being, wonders what he was doing. What was I thinking? He says, why have I bought this piece of land, O God? Look where I'm sitting. Look at this prison I, and by extension, everyone else is in. Why should we do anything? Why should we plant? Why should we invest? Why should we hope? And the Haftarah ends hanging in the air when God says in a Jobian moment to Jeremiah in the depths of that prison cell, is anything too wondrous for me? That is a Jewish way of thinking. We have been imprisoned so many times, as have so many of our ancestors and our greatest teachers. And though they understandably at times felt despair and sadness and hopelessness, they never gave up. And in their honor and their memory, neither will we. Shabbat Shalom.